Hello, AP Biology students. We're going to go over the 11th section in Unit 4. And in this section, we're going to go over something called the cycle of life. Remember that meiosis is going to produce genetically different haploid cells. These cells are otherwise known as gametes. For males, they're typically called sperm, and for females, they're typically called eggs. Meiosis occurs in sexually reproducing species because we need to create cells that have half of the genetic information. One advantage to meiosis or sexual reproduction is that this process doesn't have to rely on mutations alone to create genetic diversity in a population. So again, the advantage here is that the offspring will be genetically different from the parents. The more genetically diverse a population is, essentially the higher chance they have at surviving and throughout that evolving. Now again, our two primary locations of genetic diversity without mutations is crossing over and independent assortment. Remember that crossing over occurs when homologous pairs of chromosomes exchange genetic information, and independent assortment occurs when these chromosomes independently assort from each other during meiosis 1. Through those two processes, we're going to get gametes that are genetically different from each other. This is again without mutations. So the main goal of sexual reproduction is to create a larger diversity in the species of the next generation. Like I said before, this is a huge evolutionary advantage. You can see that you are parts of your mother and your father. But if you think about it, you are 50% of each parent, but you're 25% of each grandparent. So as you go further back, you just have to kind of have the amount of genetic information that you're going to share with each relative. This again, in turn, creates another offspring or the next generation that's just going to be genetically different than the parents. Sexual reproduction creates genetic variation, and that creates a better chance for a species to survive. Asexual reproduction typically is faster, but they don't have as much genetic diversity in their offspring. So there are trade-offs between sexual and asexual reproduction, but the main thing we're going to focus on with this section is that sexual reproduction creates genetically different offspring. Just as a review, sexual reproduction is when two haploid cells are going to fuse together to produce a diploid zygote. We typically refer to the gametes as the haploid forms of the cells that are produced through meiosis, and zygotes are the diploid cell that are formed through fertilization of an egg.